Let's talk about auto mode. Now, you may have heard people say that you need to learn how to take your camera off of auto mode, but you may not even really know why you would need to do that. And I teach a lot of group workshops, and I find all the time at the beginning of the class, I always say, hey, how many of you guys are still using auto mode? Most of the people raise their hand and sort of hang their head down low as they're doing it because they're embarrassed or something that they're using auto mode. But the fact is, most people don't really know. They may have heard they need to be off auto mode, but maybe don't really know why that is. So let's talk about that, okay? First of all, auto mode, when I'm talking about auto mode, what I'm talking about is there on that mode dial on the top of your camera, the A in green, usually. I have an arrow pointing here so you can see what I'm talking about. And you know what? That mode is fine for some situations. Okay, say you're standing somewhere with yourself or with your family or friends and you want to hand your camera to someone else to take your picture. Hey, go ahead, put it on auto mode and give it to them. Then you don't have to explain a bunch of stuff to them, before you give it to them. Or, you're just handing your camera to someone else who just wants to take a quick pic. Or if there's just something you want to get the shot and you just don't have it in you to try to sit and figure out exactly what to do right then, put it on auto mode. I mean, there's no law that says you can't do that, right? But here's the thing, for if you really want to start getting creative with your camera and taking control, auto mode, it doesn't let you do that. When you're in auto mode, you're just letting the camera make too many of the decisions for you. And when you're in auto mode, there's a higher chance that your photos are going to look just more like a snapshot instead of something amazing. But let's talk about why auto mode is not always the best option. So first of all, when you're in auto mode, you can't pinpoint your focus. So in other words, you can't really select and decide what part of your image is going to be in focus. So with this picture with my baby girl Dolly, there she was sitting on the couch and there was a tree in between us. And I wanted her in focus though, not the tree. If I had been in auto mode, the tree is what would have been in focus and not her. So that's one reason to get off auto mode. Another reason is that when you're in auto mode, you can't control how much is in focus in the foreground and the background. So here's a picture. All I did, I was teaching one of my group classes and I gave the teddy bear to someone. Here, hold this teddy bear. Because we were taking class at my studio where I photograph kids. So of course I've got stuff like that around. So anyway, so I had someone hold up the bear and I made some changes so that I could show how you can either have the background in focus or out of focus. And you can see how the one on the top, the trees in the background are relatively in focus, and the one in the background on the bottom, they're really out of focus. That again is something you just don't have much control of when you're in auto mode. Another issue with auto mode is that you can't adjust the exposure when your picture is too light or too dark. Those of you who may have been to Estes Park in Colorado or who are familiar with the Stanley Hotel, made famous by the movie The Shining, that's what this is. This is the Stanley Hotel. Anyway, so you can see the picture on the left. It was just too dark, right? And I was able to make some adjustments, not while in auto mode though. I was able to make some adjustments to make it brighter the way it needed to be. Can't do that in auto mode. Yet another reason to get out of it. So here's another example of why you want to get out of auto mode or know how, is you can't selectively freeze or show motion. So here's an example of a river. On the left, the water was crisp and sharp, exactly frozen in time, whereas the one on the right has this beautiful sort of flowy, smooth look to the water. You can't get that second version of that when you leave your camera in auto mode. And yes, there are times when you want the version on the left, but there are times you want the one on the right. So you want to be able to control when you get either of those. Another issue with auto mode is you can't influence the color under various lighting sources. And usually, I will admit, when you're in auto mode, your color usually is okay. But there are some situations where it isn't. And so, and I'm sure a lot of you guys have seen this. You're inside taking pictures inside a gym or something like that, and your pictures just are sort of yellowish. Or maybe, you're taking pictures sometimes in the snow or on a cloudy day or something, and they almost have a bluish, coolish cast to them. That's something you don't have influence over when you're in auto mode. But when you get yourself out of auto mode, you can start controlling that as well. And yet another reason, there's so many, another reason is in auto mode, as you know, sometimes your flash, your on-camera flash, it just pops up and when you don't want it to, and sometimes it doesn't pop up when you do, and you don't have control over that so much. So yet another reason to just get yourself off of auto mode and into some of these other modes that we're going to be talking about. Now, you also have these modes called the scene modes, and those are on that mode dial on the top of your camera. At least most of your cameras, you know, if you have a high-end Nikon camera, some of those will not have this mode dial. Instead, you'll have a mode button and you'll press that and then rotate a dial. But I'm guessing if you have one of those cameras, you probably are already aware of that. So anyway, the scene modes are those ones that we're pointing to here in this arrow, with this arrow again. So this is the one with the little picture of the person's head and the mountains and the flower and the little guy who's running. Those are the scene modes. So those are created for specific shooting situations. And so, you know, the camera knows if you put it on landscape mode, let's say, that people usually use certain settings when they photograph landscapes, so the camera's going to set itself to those settings. The thing is, that can be really helpful, but it's still, it doesn't give you full control. The camera is still making probably too many decisions for you in a lot of situations. We have talked about a number of limitations you'll encounter when using your camera in auto mode. To help you overcome those limitations so you can start using your camera the way it was intended, I'm going to talk about 4 of the things you need to learn to gain creative control of your camera outside of auto mode and outside of the scene modes. First, we are going to talk about how to get your photos exposed correctly. And by that, I basically mean not too dark, not too light, but just right. We're also going to talk about how to alter your depth of field to get those nice blurry backgrounds. And don't worry, if you're not sure what the term depth of field means, we're going to talk about it first thing in the next video. Next, we'll talk about how to freeze or show motion in your photos. After that, we'll talk about what's involved in getting your subjects in focus, because I know that's a huge issue for many of you. Thanks so much for being here, and I'll see you in the next video.